The rain didn't just fall that night. It descended with the cold, merciless fury of 1,000 broken promises, mirroring the constant ache in Elijah Vance's own heart. He was a man carved from hardship, his hands permanently stained with motor oil from the meager garage work that barely paid the rent on their crumbling, two-room cabin nestled at the edge of the sprawling, indifferent city. His world consisted of his 7-year-old daughter, Maya, and the silent, grinding fear that he would never be enough to shelter her from the poverty that stalked them like a shadow. It was on this brutal, unforgiving Tuesday evening, as he coaxed the last embers of a dwindling fire pit into life for warmth, that a faint, terrified tapping came at the door, a sound so fragile it was almost swallowed by the storm. He opened it to find not the landlord or a neighbor, but a small, sodden girl, perhaps 8 years old, impeccably dressed in clothes that cost more than everything he owned, her eyes wide with a silent, profound panic that eclipsed the terror of the storm raging behind her. If you believe in the transformative power of kindness, second chances, and the inherent goodness found in everyday Americans, please take a moment to hit the like button. Leave a comment below, sharing your thoughts. Share this video with someone who needs inspiration, and subscribe to the Kindness of Americans channel. Elijah's mind immediately screamed warnings. Don't get involved. This is trouble. You can't afford this. Call the police. But his heart, a muscle conditioned by years of loving a child in impossible circumstances, overruled the logic of survival. He saw not a complication, but a lost soul shivering violently. And he instinctively swept her inside, away from the icy grip of the downpour. The girl, who could only whisper her name, Lily, was exhausted and clearly disoriented, unable to articulate how she had come to be stranded kilometers from the nearest affluent neighborhood. Maya, used to the scarcity of their lives, immediately wrapped her own threadbare blanket around Lily and offered her half of her cherished, stale biscuit, an act of pure, unconditional childhood solidarity that brought a lump to Elijah's throat. He worked tirelessly to warm the child, pouring her the last of their precious tea, and forcing himself to ignore the gnawing guilt of the dwindling resources. Every sip Lily took was one his own daughter wasn't, yet watching the color slowly return to the stranger's pale cheeks was a richer reward than any cash. The hours crawled by, a blur of worried whispers, the comforting sound of Maya and Lily's rhythmic breathing from the single shared cot, and Elijah's silent vigil by the window, knowing that somewhere a desperate search must be underway. The morning broke with a deceptive, watery sun, but the calm was shattered by the distant, rising wail of sirens. Elijah knew this was the moment of truth, the moment he would have to answer to authority, perhaps even be judged for the presumptuous kindness of taking in a child he didn't know. He had prepared a nervous explanation for the police, but the sound of the vehicles stopping directly outside, followed by the sight of a cluster of expensive black SUVs, made his heart sink with a fear colder than the previous night's rain. A tall, imposing figure stepped out of the lead vehicle, flanked by men in crisp, dark suits, his face etched with a sleepless grief that immediately conveyed his identity as the father. This man, who looked like he belonged on the cover of a financial magazine, swept his gaze over the ramshackle property, the old truck propped up on blocks, and finally settled it on Elijah, who stood small and defenseless in the doorway, with Lily clutching his hand. The initial meeting was tense, thick with the unsaid judgments of wealth-observing poverty, and Elijah braced himself for contempt or, worse, suspicion. Lily's shriek of joy and her immediate sprint into the man's arms broke the suffocating tension, transforming the imposing figure into a father utterly undone by relief. As the millionaire, Julian Sterling, held his daughter tight, he spoke, his voice hoarse not with accusation, but with a raw, profound gratitude that astonished Elijah. It was then, standing on his cracked porch, that Elijah realized the man wasn't just wealthy. Julian Sterling was the Julian Sterling, the renowned tech innovator and billionaire philanthropist whose name was synonymous with impossible success. Sterling released his daughter, finally turning his full searching attention back to Elijah. He looked past the man's stained shirt and tired eyes, seeing only the immense, selfless risk that had been taken to ensure his child's safety, recognizing a moral wealth that transcended any bank account. Julian insisted on hearing the story of the night, not as a means to verify facts, but as a ritual of understanding the scope of Elijah's gift. He learned of the shared blankets, the last cup of tea, and the single-minded focus on Lily's well-being. When Julian offered a check, a figure so large it would have solved every one of Elijah's immediate financial nightmares, Elijah, respectfully, quietly refused, saying simply that he wouldn't trade the sound of a child's safe sleep for all the money in the world, and that Lily's thanks were enough. This refusal, more than the act of saving his daughter, stunned Julian. He understood then that he wasn't dealing with a poor man looking for a handout, but a genuinely rich man in need of an opportunity. Later that day, after ensuring his daughter was home safe, Julian Sterling returned not with money, but with a proposition. A fully equipped shop space, tools, and the capital to start his own legitimate business, along with a scholarship fund for Maya's education. It was a partnership founded not on charity, but on mutual respect and the recognition of true character. Elijah Vance's life, once a narrow path of unrelenting struggle, opened up onto a highway of possibility, all because he allowed a lost girl to stay the night. He took the opportunity, pouring his integrity and skill into the new venture, but he never forgot the cold rain and the fear. The two families remained intertwined. Lily and Maya became the best of friends, their bond cemented by the shared intimacy of that stormy night. Elijah taught Julian that the greatest assets aren't kept in banks, but in the depths of human compassion, while Julian gave Elijah the second chance he deserved to prove that a good heart, when given the right tools, can build an extraordinary life. If this story of selfless kindness and unexpected fortune touched your heart, please let us know. We read every comment, and your engagement is what keeps these stories alive. Leave a comment below sharing what Elijah's act of refusing the immediate cash says about his character.